Hey guys, this is the story of Sealand, the world's tiniest country, except that it actually doesn't exist. Sealand is an artificial island located 12 kilometers off the coast of Great Britain. During World War II, Britain built a number of these offshore fortresses to ward off against potential German invasion. After World War II, the British Navy completely abandoned these forts, that is until the 1960s, when pirate radio stations moved in. Oh yes, my friends, we're going to straight pirate radio town. As the name implies, pirate radio broadcasts content which might not exactly be, I don't know, what's the word? Legal. It's not legal. That's the word. Now sure, this could be something like wartime propaganda, but realistically, it was something slightly less nefarious, playing modern music, which for some reason was illegal. At the time, the BBC had a monopoly on what could be played on the radio in the UK, and they hard banned any kind of rock and roll music, claiming that it was the music of Satan. Paddy Roy Bates, a major in the British Army, set up a pirate radio station on one of these abandoned forts until the government forced him to shut it down. Not to be deterred, Bates found a new home at Rhodes Tower, an almost identical fort in every way, except for where it was located. Since Rhodes Tower was located 12 kilometers off the UK's sovereign borders, it meant that it was officially in international waters and therefore not subject to the UK's jurisdiction. Time for some rock and roll. Wait, no, some rock and roll. Some rock and roll. The only problem was that someone had already beat him there. Rhodes Tower was already occupied by Radio London, a very similar pirate radio station, which is also focused on rock and roll. I promise that's the last one. I promise that's the last one. Maybe. That was not going to stop Bates and his wife, who evicted the other station with the help of some guns and Molotov cocktails. However, Bates never resumed broadcasting from Rhodes Tower. By then, changes to British broadcasting made pirate radio stations kind of obsolete. Not only were independent radio stations now allowed to operate, but more importantly, the BBC finally opened up their ban on that rock and roll! But of course, Bates didn't want to go through all that trouble for nothing, so he did the next logical thing and declared Sealand as a completely independent country. Because the platform was in international waters, it meant that technically it actually was up for grabs. So with that, they became a micronation known as the Principality of Sealand. Micronations claim to be an independent nation, however, the distinction here is that they are not recognized by the rest of the world, and thus are then micronations in this weird gray area of kind of a country, but really not. For example, Vatican City is a micro-state, which means that it is of course very tiny. However, the key difference here is that other countries recognize it as a legitimate state, something that no one has ever done with Sealand. Britain tried to battle this, but a court ruled in Sealand's favor, which then of course prompted the British government to immediately destroy all of the other forts with the exception of Sealand. From here, Sealand quickly did all the real country things, such as developing a flag, issuing their own money and passports. You can even become a lord, lady, or baron of Sealand. In fact, you can actually purchase a lordship straight from the Sealand website, and you better believe that you're now looking at Lord Austin Evans of Sealand. Come on, you think I was not gonna do that? You think I could resist? In 1978, a group of German and Dutch businessmen lured Bates and his wife away from Sealand under the guise of building a luxury casino on the platform. Instead, while the Bates were away, mercenaries stormed the platform with jet skis and guns, hoping to take control of Sealand. And yes, this is a real story. They were led by Roy's friend and the Prime Minister of Sealand, so I guess this is a coup, Alexander Achenbach. So naturally, Bates enlisted the helicopter pilot from a James Bond movie and rappelled down into Sealand, firing a single shotgun blast and scaring away all of the super scary mercenaries. Boom! Get off my country, land, island.
All of those are correct.
That actually is correct. I accidentally got it right. But of course, they couldn't get away that easily, and Achenbach was held for treason. That actually seems pretty reasonable to me. As you might imagine, for security reasons, these days Sealand is off limits to the general public, except for a few exceptions, such as when the X Games was hosted there, as well as at one point, the Pirate Bay tried to buy Sealand altogether. But maybe that might be a story for another time.